Hi friends, I am here right now with my beginning woodwinds class, and we are going to talk about some very basic music notation. I'm using my cell phone as a document camera to do the best we can to make sure that you understand all of this material too. So the first thing I'd like to do is this is my woodwind class, so we are all treble clef readers, so it's really important that we know how to draw a treble clef. Now I'm going to draw one just so you can see it, and don't pay attention to the lines that are on my paper for now because those will actually be important later, but right now we're just going to draw. So I want everybody, I'm going to show you what it's going to look like. This is our treble clef. And I know that some of you might look at that and say, oh my goodness, that's really scary. That looks really hard. Don't freak out. Everybody start by drawing just one long line. And if you really want to be fancy, put a little hook at the bottom of it. Kind of like a big letter J, but with little tiny hook at the bottom. So after you've done that, I want you to draw a little half circle on the right side of your line. Okay, so you've got your little hook down here, you've got a line, a loop, and now we're gonna draw that swooshy thing. So I'm gonna continue the line and make my little swoosh. So now let's see if we can do that one more time the easy way. A nice long line with the little hook at the bottom. Go back to the top, half circle to the right, and then the swoosh. Now you'll notice that some of mine are a little bit different sizes. This is obviously the pretty one. This one's okay, and then this one got a little cray-cray over here, and that's all right. Now let's see if we can do this all together. I want you to try and follow with me. I know my students are following along, but I want those of you at home to try as well. So we're going to start at the bottom this time. So we're going to do this part right here first, and we're going to go up to the top. You ready? Pencils, pens down. Little half circle hoop, and we're going to go up to the top. Boom. Easy. Now we're going to go to the right for a half circle, and then to the left for the swoosh. Great. Hopefully that was easy. Now I want you to practice drawing these clefs a little bit because this is going to be important when we actually start reading our music. Let's practice just a couple more. And you can follow along with me if you want, or you can practice by yourself while we go through this. I'm going to do 3 more. So I'm going to start at the bottom. Hook, line, loop, swoosh. And it is okay if this is really scary for you. I promise with practice, they'll get easier. Hook at the bottom, line to the top, half circle, little squishy circle, and then the swoosh. Okay, and they don't have to be perfect. Like this is probably the best one I drew. That one's not bad either. But some of these all look a little bit inconsistent. The most important part is actually going to be this bottom part, and we'll talk about that later. One more. Ready? Hook. Straight line up to the top. Half circle. Swoosh. Couple of things that are really common that kids do. Going the wrong way. This is wrong. This is technically not a treble clef. We don't want that. So always make sure you have your line at the bottom, go up to the top, go to the right, and then go to the left. And you start with your half circle up here, and then the swooshy part there. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start talking about a staff. We're going to put this away for a second, and I want you to get a clean piece of paper. You can either just flip it over. I kind of cheated. I got a little ahead of you. So I have right here what's called a grand staff. The grand staff is 10 lines. So I actually have space for a bass clef. Don't worry about this one yet. We'll learn this one at another time. This is all of our low brass instruments. Bass clef goes on this staff. I'm going to try to put my treble clef up here on this top staff. Notice we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines. And there's spaces in between them. 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. And I'm going to draw my treble clef on this staff. I start below, I go up to the top. Oh no, we froze. Okay. Well, that's not good. Sorry about that. So we have our bass clef here, and the treble clef, we'll do this in pieces, and we'll talk about this in more detail later. This treble clef goes from the bottom up to the top, and then we do our half circle to the middle line, and then you do your swoosh off to the left. And what's really important is that the little circle here goes around this second line on the staff. And the reason why is because this treble clef is also called a G clef. So the treble clef shows us where G is. So we know right now that this staff has, that note has to be G. So what I like to do, there's two different ways I teach this. I teach the line notes and space notes. And I'm just using a circle right now as a placeholder. Eventually this will be called a whole note. We don't need to worry about that for now. These 5 notes are our line notes. And I use the acronym, or that little reminder thing that helps us remember what the notes are. Every good boy. Now some people will change this one. I hear does fine. I like deserves fudge. So line notes, every good boy deserves fudge. Space notes are the ones that go in between those lines. Notice I'm just using a circle again to show me where those space notes are. These ones spell the word face. F-A-C-E. So there's 2 things that are happening here. You have your line notes and your space notes. And then there's another way to look at it. Every line and every space accounts for one of the notes. And they always go up. When they go up, they go forward in the alphabet. So the band alphabet is letters A through G, and then we start over again. So I usually sing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, you get the point. A through G are the only notes that we have. So if we know that this bottom line is an E, the space between this note and this one is going to be an F. So E, next space is F, then we have G, next space is A, then B, C, D, E, F. So every line and every space has a symbol, and they count for each one. What I encourage students to do is to use an acronym to start with, and then when we get a little more advanced, sometimes we change that. Okay, so my students right now, what questions do you have? Do we have any questions from my students right now? It's okay to just unmute and ask.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so is it better to draw the like loopy thing from the bottom or from the top?
So good question. Question is it better to draw the loopy thing from the bottom or the top? If it's easier for you to draw it like this, if that's easier for you, then do it that way. I do it usually just one big motion because I've been drawing these probably longer than most of you have been alive. But if it's easier for you to do this, then I say do it.
Okay.
Totally fine. Great question. Any other questions from? Okay, go ahead.
I have a question. My question is, do you do these circle things with the letters in the middle? Do they have a meaning? Like, did the people who made music choose it?
The question is the letters in between the circles. These stand for a letter Can you mute for a second so I don't have the echo? Thank you. So the letter in between here actually corresponds to a fingering on your instrument. So if I'm a clarinetist, when I see this E, it stands for the E on my clarinet, where I put my thumb and my index finger down on my left hand. And we'll talk about fingerings later, but before we put the instrument in your hands, I really like to make sure people know how to read the staff first, so I don't have to teach you 18 things at once. So we're going to learn how to read first, and then we'll talk about fingerings, and then we'll talk about putting those together. That was a great question. Was that what you were looking for?
Yes.
Okay, and then I have a more advanced student who has taken some piano lessons, and he's asking about what about notes down here and lower. These are ledger lines, and right now that's not what we're talking about, because that's a little bit more advanced than I want to teach right in the beginning. So we're only going to talk about notes that are in between the staff lines right now. Let's master that first, and then we'll go on to the more advanced things. Any other questions from my students?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are we supposed to write this all down?
So my students asked if they were supposed to write this down. It's good to practice this. I will not be collecting this as an assignment today, but this is just good practice. Okay. Any other questions from my students?
Question.
Sure.
Is E the lowest note or the highest note?
So that's a good question. Question is E the lowest note or the highest note? Notice that there's an E here and there's an E here. So these are actually different pitches, and when on your instrument, they're going to be different fingerings too. So it'll be different buttons. This one's really low and this one's a lot higher. So they're actually different notes, but they have the same name. Kind of like having like two Owens in your class, and there's a short one and there's a tall one. Does that answer your question? I hope so. Okay. Any other questions from my students? Okay, I'm going to assume we are safe to move on. I have a couple.
No.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. Okay, can my students type your or just say I have a question, or put a Q in there so I can call on someone? Okay, Sachin, what's your question?
Does Face and Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge, do they go together, or are those for different instruments? Like, would Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge be for clarinet, while the...
This is an excellent question, Sachin.
That's okay.
So on, that was kind of the next picture that I was gonna draw. So I like to draw the staff two different ways. We looked at the Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge, and then I think it's good to have a visual this way. So we are learning how to read the treble clef, and our instruments do something called transposing. So what that means is that the notes that you read may not be the same for everybody, but on a treble clef, this bottom note is always going to be E. So this is always read E, but when we play different, like saxophones and clarinets, they sound a little bit different. So it's a little bit more advanced concept that I don't necessarily want to talk about right this second. But when we look at a treble clef, this is always E, whether we're reading it for a piano or a clarinet or a flute or a saxophone or a trumpet, this is always going to be E. It just means different fingerings on those different instruments. So it's E, and then we go to a space note, F. Every good boy, okay? And then we know that our space notes, first space, second space, that second letter of space is A. Now we go back to the spaces, every good boy. See how they alternate? Now the spaces, we need the third space, S, A, C. Go back to lines. Every good boy deserves. Spaces, S, A, C, E. Lines, every good boy deserves fudge. So every line and every space is accounted for. And they go, when they go up on the staff, they go forward in the alphabet. When you get to G, you start over. Okay, that's the next thing that I was going to draw here. So Sasheen, you kind of got me going the right direction anyway. Other questions? Just put the letter Q in our chat and I can answer them. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so let's practice drawing some. Oh, we have one more, looks like. Massimo. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, so that hook at the bottom of the treble thingy,
Yeah.
which way does it always turn? Does it always turn one way or another?
Great question. Massimo asked, if the hook at the bottom of the treble clef, which way does it turn? It always turns to the left. The hook always goes to the left.
So it never goes to the right?
Never goes to the right. Excellent question.
Okay.
So that's why I like to start at the bottom, because it's kind of a left, right type situation. So we start on the left, go up, go to the right, and then go to the left, and then to the right. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So, and to be honest, with my students in the very beginning, if you just draw this, so long as the swirl goes around that point, that second line right here, it's going to be correct. This is the most important part, is that swirl shows me where G is. And it has to be on that second line because it's a G clef. Mr. Reynolds, what's your question?
So, is A and G the only note? A through G the only notes, or like, is there other letters that we're not learning right now?
Okay, excellent question. A through G are the only letters that we are going to use in the band alphabet. We do not use letters H through Z. They don't exist. So we only symbolize these A through, and then if you really want to get a little extra credit, the one that sits on top is G. Oops, my phone timed out, so we'll start over. There we go. So we only use A through G, and when you get to G, you start over. You go back to A. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D. You get the point. Okay, so only A through G. Okay, shall we practice a little bit more? Let's do a few more treble clefs here on the staff this time. If you have not already drawn 5 lines, can you do that on your paper for me? And maybe do 2 sets of them. Do this one, and I cheated. I already have one drawn down here. I skipped a half a dozen lines or so. So can you draw me 2 staves? So again, these 5 lines are called a staff. Draw 2 staves, sorry. And let's practice. It's okay if you've only drawn 1. We can put them kind of close together. So the hook starts below the staff. Just put your pencil down. And we're going to draw a little, basically a letter J starting from the bottom part. So starting here, just a little letter J. Now let's go all the way to the top. Go to the right next. Little squishy half circle to the middle. Notice that I did my half circle to that middle of the line right here. This is kind of like X marks the spot. Half circle. And then the swirl. Try that again. J up to the top. Squishy half circle. And then this one's a little bit bigger. And it stops on that line right there. Remember, that swirl has to show me that second line. X marks the spot right there. Let's do 3 more. J up to the top, to the right, and a circle. And it's okay right now if you just want to watch me draw some of them. Sometimes it's a little bit easier if you just watch. J to the top, half circle, and a swirl. J to the top, to the right, to the left, to the right. The more you practice them, the easier they will get. I will say the most important thing is make sure your directions are right, but this swirl has to go around where X marks the spot on that second line from the bottom, because this class being a G class shows me where G is. If I draw a treble clef like this, I'll just squeeze one in here. If I draw a treble clef like this, it's showing me that G is here. And that's not how we read this class. Okay, Tristan has many questions, it looks like. Tristan, what's your question? You can unmute, sweetie. Tristan, I don't hear your question. Are you muted still? Okay, you can type your question if you have a question still, Tristan. I think I'm going to stop our share and stop recording because I think we've covered the basics for the channel. And then I'll give you guys some chances to ask some questions and we might quiz a little bit. For my viewers on beginningbandbootcamp.com, I encourage you to practice and use note trainers as much as possible. I know that sometimes it gets really challenging and it seems like a lot of information in the beginning, but I promise with practice, this will get much, much easier. So I wish you the best of luck, and as always, happy practicing.